The Grey Knights are a secret and mysterious chapter of Space Marines specifically tasked with combating the dangerous demonic entities of the Warp and all those mortals who wield the corrupt power of the Chaos Gods. They were created by the Emperor with the aid of Malkador the Sigillite at the time of the Horus Heresy to serve as humanity's greatest weapon against the threat posed by the existence of chaos. They have the honor of being implanted with gene seed engineered directly from the genome of the Emperor himself. The Grey Knights act as the military arm or chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the Daemonhunters who form the oldest branch of the virtually omnipotent Inquisition. The Grey Knights' fortress monastery, the Citadel of Titan, is based on Titan, the largest of the moons of the gas giant Saturn in the Sol system. It is kept as a private preserve of the Inquisition. The existence of the highly secretive chapter is virtually unknown outside of the Inquisition and the highest echelons of the Imperial Adepta, and is a well-guarded secret enforced by mind wipes and even assassination of Imperial citizens if necessary. Unlike other astartes, every Grey Knight is a potent psyker. Yet, in the 10,000 standard years of Imperial history, no Grey Knight has ever been corrupted by the ruinous powers of chaos. Additionally, the Grey Knights do not follow the tenets of the Codex Astartes in the matter of force organization. Due to the unique manner in which the Grey Knights are recruited and trained, each warrior progresses through a series of preordained ranks and will operate in a particular squad led by an individual of higher rank, rather than being assigned to a particular battle company. These squads may be called upon to act independently from the main body of the Grey Knight force and have to operate at full efficiency even when light years away from the rest of their chapter. As such, the Brother Captain, who is the leader of each Grey Knight Brotherhood or any other Grey Knight unit commander, is obeyed immediately and without question by those under his command. A light against the darkness, the Grey Knights stand against the greatest threat mankind has ever faced. They are the champions of reason, order, and righteousness, holding back demons and the scions of the dark gods. They are the Imperium's mightiest weapon against the Warp, transhuman space marine psychers, and its single enduring hope for salvation. There is no greater threat to the galaxy than the denizens of the Warp and the ruinous powers that rule them. Demons and gods, these otherworldly horrors tear at the veil between the realm of chaos and reality, hungry for the souls of humanity and the ruin of worlds. If left unchecked and unopposed, demons would claim the universe for their own, pulling down the pillars of creation and fashioning a never-ending nightmare where once the galaxy had been. Demons are unlike any other foe the Imperium faces, and against their unnatural horror, men and women can find themselves powerless. The Emperor's armies are vast and numerous, from the void-born fleets of the Imperial Navy and the endless ranks of the Astra Militarum to the superhuman Space Marines and the unimaginably powerful Titan legions. Mortal foes cannot stand against the Imperium when it is roused to war, but the demon is not mortal. History has proven that all people can be corrupted, and even the mighty chapters of the Adeptus Astartes are not immune to the unholy temptations of the dark gods. In his infinite wisdom, the Emperor foresaw that even should he prevail against Horus, the threat of chaos would remain to forever after threaten humanity. He knew that of all the Imperium's many foes, the demonic was the greatest threat, and so he created a brotherhood of incorruptible warriors to fight demons. These were the Grey Knights, and they would stand as the Emperor's ultimate weapon against the gods of chaos. The Grey Knights are the most mysterious of all the Imperium's warriors. Their creation was the culmination of a plan conceived in the dying days of the Horus Heresy, hidden from even the Emperor's armies lest it be uncovered by his foes. Even now, few in the Imperium of the 41st millennium know of their existence, and those that do possess only fragments of the truth. Legends and myths surround the Grey Knights, and those tales told about them are filled with broad misconceptions and fanciful lies. The vast hordes of humanity know nothing of the Grey Knights, and the handful of Imperial citizens that have heard the name uttered assume them to be an arm of the much-feared Inquisition or a chapter of the mythical transhuman Space Marines. Some of the stories and fables taught by the Adeptus Ministorum hold the barest hints of the existence of the Grey Knights, but they are portrayed as silver-armored angels, ghostly manifestations of the God Emperor, or shimmering reflections of the saints themselves as often as not. Those Imperial soldiers that have fought alongside the Grey Knights and retained both their lives and their minds recall them only as astartes of an unknown Space Marine chapter, their unique weapons and psychic powers attributed to forgotten technology and tactical doctrine. Other Space Marines know better should they see a Grey Knight in battle, but are wise enough not to dwell long in thought about these mysterious warriors. Legend has it that the Grey Knights were founded on the order of the Emperor himself in the final bloody days of the Horus Heresy, just before the start of the Siege of Terra. The Emperor knew that the time was coming when he would have to face his traitorous son Horus, and that he might well not survive. However, he foresaw that even if Horus and his armies were defeated, the power of chaos would remain an ever-present and constant threat to humankind. His greatest warriors, the Space Marines, had proven unfortunately corruptible to the temptations of the Dark Gods, and so the Emperor set out to create a new transhuman soldier in his bid to continue to protect mankind, even from his own gravest mistakes. This new breed of Space Marine would be far stronger of will than their brothers, and unwavering in their loyalty to humanity, able to stand naked before the power of the warp and survive unscathed. In this dark time, the Emperor turned to Malkador the Sigillite, his most trusted servant and the first High Lord of Terra and Imperial Regent. Malkador was a powerful psyker, lore-keeper of the fledgling Imperium, and had stood at the Emperor's side since before the start of the Unification Wars. He was charged by the Emperor immediately after news had reached Terra of the War Master Horus's betrayal during the massacre of the loyalist Astartes on Istvan III, to gather a group of dedicated Imperial servants whose loyalty, courage, and strength of mind was unquestioned. As the Emperor prepared for the final battle with Horus, Malkador crossed the divided Imperium, searching corpse-choked battlefields and worlds drowning in blood for those the Emperor sought. No other person save the Emperor himself could have been given such a task and hope to complete it. However, Malkador returned to the Imperial Palace just before Horus's forces laid siege to Terra. Only the Sigillite's psychic mastery and knowledge of the hidden ways into the palace allowed him to slip through the traitors' growing blockade around the Sol system to reach the Emperor's side. When the Master of Mankind looked upon those Malkador had brought before him, he knew that there was yet hope for humanity. 12 in all had been gathered, 4 noble lords and governors of the highest order, complemented by 8 Space Marines, though each group met the Emperor separately at different times in the final days before the Siege of Terra began. These 8 selected Space Marines all possessed paranormal skills as psychers that had been kept dormant as required by the edicts of the Council of Nicaea. The Council had ruled during the Great Crusade that the use of psychic powers was forbidden to Space Marines because of the dangers innate to manipulation of the Imperium. These warriors had all willingly cast aside their former loyalties to their given Space Marine legions and primarchs, either because of the corruption of these legions by chaos, or because they realized that loyalty to the Emperor required them to sacrifice all ties to their former battle brothers. All had served for a time with the Knights Errant, Malkador's cadre of independent Space Marines that had served as his special agents throughout the course of the Horus Heresy. That some of these battle brothers came from legions that had turned traitor proved the depth of their loyalty to the Emperor, for there can be no greater challenge for a Space Marine than to defy the word of his primarch. After meeting the candidates, the Emperor is believed to have responded, "Malkador, you have judged well. These 8 Space Marines do indeed have a vital role to play in the future of the Imperium, though veiled in secrecy will they be." Content that his plans could proceed, the Emperor bade Malkador and his charges leave for Titan, the moon of Saturn. The Grey Knights were created alongside what later became the Inquisition, and their goals were intertwined. They would be the staunch allies of this new organization, fashioned in the image of the Space Marine chapters, their battle brothers augmented by the Emperor's advanced science and genetic experimentation. Blessed with both transhuman physiology and the most advanced Imperial weaponry, the Grey Knights would be the most elite force of the Adeptus Astartes. However, it would not be enough for them merely to be strong of body and skilled at war, though in this they surpass even other Space Marines. To fight the demon, the Grey Knights would need to be unusually pure of heart as well, with an unblemished soul in which the corruption and temptations of the warp could find no purchase. In Malcador's absence, the Emperor had prepared a concealed fortress monastery on the moon of ringed Saturn called Titan. Hidden under layers of rock and shrouded by powerful technologies, the structure had eluded discovery by the traders, while their fleets were in the Sol system, their armies focused on Terra, where the fate of the Imperium was unfolding. After departing the Imperial Palace, Malcador's charges parted ways. The four unaugmented human lords created the framework for the Inquisition, the Imperium's secret police force and intelligence service, tasked with rooting out heresy from within the Imperium. Malcador took the 8 Space Marine Psychers to the fortress on Titan through a webway portal. There he set about laying the foundations of a new order of Astartes. Everything had been prepared for the coming of the Sigillite and the Battle Brothers. An army of servitors maintained the fortress, while cryovaults hidden at its core contained vast stocks of specially prepared gene seed based on the Emperor's own genome rather than that of any primarch. Hundreds of thousands of recruits had also been gathered from the worlds of the Imperium. These would become the raw material that Malcador would fashion into the Grey Knights chapter. Malcador's servants had chosen each of these recruits carefully, the recruits' minds deeply probed to see if they bore even the slightest hint of chaos corruption. The recruits were also chosen for their latent psychic gifts, so that once human flesh was implanted with Space Marine gene seed organs, they would grow into potent Astartes Psychers, with a unique control over their abilities. To find so many suitable specimens, Malcador's servants had searched the hundreds of thousands of planets of the Imperium, taking aspirants from the seed worlds of the Loyalist legions, as well as from the ranks of the Imperial army. Some were even taken from primitive worlds newly restored to the Imperium, their hardy people ignorant of the Sky War that had brought them to Titan, but willing to do what the gods demanded. For those first days, Malcador guided the 8 in the formation of the Grey Knights, overseeing the awakening of the Great Citadel and its new chapter. However, events were coming to a close on Terra, and as the traitor armies gathered for a final blow against the Imperial Palace, Malcador was summoned back to the Emperor's side to carry out his final duty. Before he departed, the Sigillite selected Janus from among the 8 to continue the work he had begun. So it was that Janus became the first Supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights. Malcador's final act on Titan was to weave a complex psychic ward about the moon to shield it from the mayhem raging across the galaxy. Whereas before the Sigillite's artifice had merely hidden the fortress monastery known as the Citadel of Titan from detection, it now concealed the entire planet. Wrapping Titan in a bubble of reality, Malcador sent it into the warp, where it would ride out the final battle for the Imperium. His rites complete, the Sigillite returned to Terra to face his final fate in service to the Emperor. For many standard years, Titan remained absent from the galaxy. While the Emperor was interred in the Golden Throne and the traitors fled into the Eye of Terror, the Grey Knights chapter grew within the safety of its hidden cyst within the warp. As the Loyalist Space Marine legions and then their successors among the chapters of the reformed Adeptus Astartes hunted down the survivors of Horus's army during the Great Scouring, the Grey Knights trained and perfected their physical and psychic skill. Finally, many standard years after the end of the Horus heresy, as the Loyalist Space Marine legions were dividing themselves into chapters in accordance with the newly crafted Codex Astartes, Titan returned, just as Malcador had planned. However, time is subjective within the warp, and where only standard years had passed in real space, Whole solar decades had slipped away in the fortress monastery of the Grey Knights. 8 full Space Marines and hundreds of thousands of raw recruits had entered the warp. A full 1,000 Grey Knights emerged. In Malkador's stead, the Grey Knight's first Supreme Grand Master Janus had created the formidable weapon against the warp dreamed of by the Emperor, and it now stood ready to begin its righteous task. By this time, the human lords originally gathered by the Sigillite were masters of the organization that had become the Inquisition and had long been awaiting the return of Titan. With great care and utmost secrecy, the Inquisitor Lords added the Grey Knights to the records of the Adeptus Terra as the 666th chapter of Space Marines. Lost in the anarchy of the Second Founding, so many and varied were the names and foundings of that time that few noticed the addition of another Space Marine chapter. The only organization to know the Grey Knights' true purpose was the Inquisition, and shortly after the return of Titan, the Lords of the Inquisition traveled to the chapter's fortress monastery, where they met with Supreme Grand Master Janus. What transpired between these great lords is recorded in the annals of the chapter, the sacred words of Janus and the Inquisitor Lords marked out in ancient ink, telling of this first secret pact between the Inquisition and the Grey Knights. In the first centuries after the creation of the Grey Knights, the chapter was called upon many times by the Inquisition. In the wake of the Horus heresy, the Imperium still burned with war and was plagued by demonic incursions. On the twin moons of Yerm, silver-armored angels were held responsible for the destruction of the Ithacan demon Cruciform. Though none of the local citizens survived, they left behind crude drawings on the walls of their refugee caves, depicting men clad in glowing silver impaling twisting shapes of burning crimson, all fangs and claws. The Great Star Mirror of Vows records the coming of the Daemonhunters, though none of the ancient astronomers lived to speak of what they saw. In the inky depths of the mirror, the fate of the Vows system can be discerned, every event to touch its worlds reflected, reaching back thousands of Terran years. When the warp worm came to Vows III to feed, a shining vessel appeared from the void. The warriors it disgorged set upon the worm and its servants, cleansing Vows III in a war visible from space. During the hell reign of Corpolis, blind and deaf Adeptus Ministorum monks witnessed the Grey Knights banish the cornate Sturmlord. Huddled in the dripping cellars of their mountain sanctuary, their minds were tormented by the psychic blood rain that drowned the world. Such was the glorious presence of the Daemonhunters that even without eyes or ears, the monks sensed their coming, seeing their deeds as fierce argent flashes in their minds. The Grey Knights fought their secret war wherever the threat of the dark gods appeared, seeking out those places where the fabric of reality grew thin and hungry. Demons turned their gaze to the realm of man. This was to be the sacred duty of the Grey Knights, and their endless struggle against a foe without number or remorse. The famed Great Crusade iterator Kirill Sinderman, later known as the Inquisitor Lastan Nimagion Veritus, survived for 1,500 Terran years until the end of the War of the Beast in the mid-32 and Millennium. After being poisoned by High Lord Draken von Gorick, the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum, Veritas confided in fellow Inquisitor Wienand that he was the last of the 4 original Inquisitors chosen by Malkador the Sigillite to know of the founding of the Grey Knights. He revealed that it was he who ordered the Grey Knights to battle the forces of chaos during the centuries following the Horus heresy, but knowledge of them were kept to only himself, the Grey Knights, and those of the other original Inquisitors who were now dead. The Grey Knights were too important of a force to be wasted during the War of the Beast, and the structure of the Inquisition at that time prevented them from being used properly to defeat the threat of chaos. Before dying, Veritas imparted to Wienand a code chip that allowed her access to Titan so she could meet with Supreme Grand Master Janus. Once having navigated through the various environmental protections provided by the moon, she discussed the splitting of the Inquisition into what became the Ordo Xenos and the Ordo Malleus, with the Grey Knights serving as the newborn Ordo Malleus's chamber militant. Wienand died on Terra a standard century later, after helping to ensure that Von Gorich was overthrown during the event known as the Beheading, leaving it unclear whether the Inquisition's planned restructuring had been completed by that time. Over the centuries, as the Imperial bureaucracy stabilized following the Great Scouring, the Grey Knights eventually did become the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus. Fashioned in the image of the standard Space Marine chapters, the Grey Knights' battle brothers were augmented by the Emperor's advanced science and genetic experimentation. Blessed with both transhuman physiology and the most advanced weaponry, the Grey Knights would be the secret elite of the Adeptus Astartes. However, it would not be enough for them merely to be strong of body and skilled at war, though in this they surpassed even other Space Marines. To fight the demon, the Grey Knights needed to be pure of heart and mind as well, with an unblemished soul in which the inherent corruption of the warp could find no purchase. To combat demonkind, all Grey Knights are trained to bend the powers of the warp to their will, and each one is a powerful psyker. Mundane blades and guns will not suffice against demonic foes, and so the Emperor ensured that the Grey Knights would have the skill to turn the weapons of the warp against its denizens. Few mortal minds can master the powers of the warp without becoming infected by the corruption of that nether realm, and many human psychers end their days wailing in madness or tearing at their ruined flesh with bloody fingers. Grey Knights, however, are unique amongst mankind in their control of their psychic gifts, their purity of soul and strength of will, an impregnable wall against the horrors of the warp. Even the librarians of other chapters cannot match the psychic mastery of each Grey Knight, and must always be vigilant against the insidious threat of demonic possession or madness brought about by coming into contact with the warp. A Grey Knight does not gaze into the warp and fear what lurks within. Rather, the creatures of the warp recoil from him. Like all Space Marines of the Adeptus Astartes, the Grey Knights are few in number, a mere handful when counted against the vast span of the galaxy and the countless foes of the Imperium. However, even a handful of these expert warriors are enough to turn the tide of a battle or vanquish a determined foe. There are few enemies of the Emperor that can hope to stand against a Grey Knight, even when they outnumber him many times over. Few as they are, the Grey Knights appear only when there is a grave threat to the Imperium from the warp, often in places where the Dark Gods have unleashed their demons upon reality. Theirs is a secret war against the warp, the true extent of the threat from the ruinous powers hidden from most of the Imperium, much like the existence of the chapter itself. It falls to the Grey Knights to contain the powers of the warp, sealing breaches between the material universe and the immaterium, or banishing powerful demons that have taken physical form. Like a righteous storm of the Emperor's wrath, the Grey Knights will appear out of the void, their sleek strike cruisers plunging them deep into the heart of the demonic sore upon reality. With exacting precision and pitiless fury, they will purge a world of demons, slaying demonic heralds and putting to death the chaos cults and heretics that summon them. Often the need of quelling a full-blown demonic incursion will throw the chapter into an existing war zone where they will be called upon to fight all manner of foes other than demons. Alien monstrosities, Xenos witches, and heretic astartes all fall just as easily to the sanctified nemesis force weapons, blessed bolters, and psychic might of the Grey Knights. However, these are merely a distraction from the chapter's true purpose, the eradication of the demon. The Grey Knights are unique amongst the Space Marines as the only Astartes chapter, perhaps with the exception of the Imperial Fist's successors called the Exorcists, to have full knowledge of the dark secrets of chaos. They alone completely know of and understand the existence of demons and of their ability to enter real space, and they alone are best equipped to battle and defeat mankind's most terrible enemy. While other chapters and Imperial forces have some knowledge of demons and how to fight them, only the Grey Knights are privy to the darkest, deepest secrets that the Ordo Malleus possesses on these creatures and how to defeat them. The existence of the Grey Knights chapter is one of the most closely held secrets of the Inquisition. Beyond the Inquisition, only the members of the highest echelons of the Imperium are aware of the Grey Knights' existence, though even they are ignorant of the chapter's organization and methods. The reasons for this secrecy start with the policy instituted by the Emperor before the start of the Great Crusade. The existence of chaos and the demonic within the Imperium was a secret that only the Emperor was to be privy to, a secret that was only forcibly revealed thanks to the outbreak of the Horus Heresy. The Inquisition, which was originally created for the purpose of waging a secret war against chaos, applied the post-heresy imperial policy of secrecy, which closely followed the Emperor's own, to the entire Imperium. The existence of chaos, the powerful warp entities called chaos gods, and the demonic was privileged knowledge which was to be kept from the populace of the Imperium at all costs. This policy was instituted as a way of preventing the spread of chaos's innate corruption to the sinful and easily corrupted common people of the galaxy. Because of this secrecy, unauthorized knowledge of the Grey Knight's existence by Imperial military personnel or civilians will result in the mind-wiping or execution of the subject, while even an exterminatus may be considered and applied to a world whose population has learned the truth about chaos. One exception to this rule is the Space Wolves chapter, whose full complement of astartes was granted knowledge of the Grey Knight's existence following the purges of Imperial personnel that resulted from the First War for Armageddon in 444. M41. Few have ever laid eyes upon a Grey Knight and lived long after the experience, perishing soon after either to the forces of the demonic incursion that brought the chapter to their world or the zealous purity of the Grey Knights in the aftermath. Only the Grey Knights can be trusted to resist the lure of chaos, and while armies of the Astra Militarum, Adeptus Astartes, and other soldiers of the Imperium might aid in the destruction of warp entities, they will likely become corrupted from the experience. Even the smallest risk of chaos taint is too great to ignore, and Imperial guardsmen will be executed or subjected to telepathic scouring, while Space Marines might be mind-wiped or sworn to secrecy with the gravest of oaths to their primarch. So it is that when the psychic warriors are spoken of, if ever, it is only as legends and myths. Due to their secretive nature, little is known about the Grey Knights' operations. Yet, deep beneath their great fortress monastery on the moon of Saturn called Titan lie countless Grey Knight heroes, although few outside the Inquisition and the chapter itself will ever know that they existed. In the Space Marines' long history, the Grey Knights hold the highest honor of all. No Grey Knight has ever turned to chaos or betrayed the trust of the Emperor. This is a subject of much speculation and discussion within the chapter and the Inquisition. Inquisitorial scholars have written numerous treatises on the subject of the chapter's inexplicable, continuing purity in the face of constant involvement with chaos and the warp, even when many inquisitors have fallen to the archenemy's corruption. One possibility is that the Grey Knights have proven incorruptible due to the unusual nature of their gene seed. They each are imbued with the absolute purity of the Emperor himself. However, several primarchs, carriers of the Emperor's genetic code in part, fell to chaos corruption, even though they were much more meticulously engineered, their genetic creation undertaken by the Imperial Biotechnical Division and supervised by the Emperor before the Great Crusade during the Ancient Primarch Project. Another view is that each Grey Knight must constantly reaffirm and retain the purity given to them by the Emperor's gene seed through right thought and right deeds. There have been thousands of Grey Knights through the millennia, and therefore countless opportunities for corruption, yet none has ever fallen. This reality defies statistical probability, yet its cause remains unknown, and perhaps unknowable. The debate on the incorruptibility of the chapter continues, as no authoritative conclusion has been reached by the Inquisition. Yet for those with faith in the Emperor, the truth is simple. The Emperor protects. The galaxy has always been plagued by warp storms, imperial rifts, and other tears in the veil of reality, where the cold, corrupting energies of the immaterium bleed through into the void. Where the boundaries of the material universe wear thin, it falls to the Grey Knights to try to contain them and quell the inevitable demonic tide that spills through into real space. However, in the centuries since the chapter's creation at the end of the Horus Heresy, the veil between reality and the realm of chaos has continued to weaken, and like an ancient tapestry, its frayed threads have come undone in ever-increasing numbers as the 41st millennium wore on. At what was believed to be the end of the 41st millennium, after the fall of Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler, the Cicatrix Maledictum has torn a great rent across imperial space, swallowing millions of worlds as it yawns open and leaving as many teetering on the precipice of utter destruction or damnation. From the maw of this great rift pour legions of demons in numbers never before seen. The scale of the current demonic invasion is greater than any faced by the Grey Knights throughout their chapter's long history, but perhaps it was for this very time that the Emperor created them. Like bolts of silver lightning, in the era Indomitus, Grey Knight strike forces fly to all corners of the galaxy, the Imperium Nihilus and Imperium Sanctus alike, delivering the Emperor's holy wrath to all the denizens of the warp who seek to pollute the master of mankind's realm. The Grey Knight's strength of spirit, indomitable will, and purity of mind and body were the most important gifts the Emperor passed on to the chapter through his unique genetic legacy. Their military training, potent weaponry, and powerful armor are simply tools to aid them in their duty. Without the psychic might to use his Nemesis Force Sword or the inviolate will to resist the temptations of the demon, a Grey Knight is the same as any other Space Marine, a potent transhuman soldier in the Emperor's armies, but nonetheless a mere shadow of his true potential. The Grey Knights are unique in that their gene seed was not descended from any of the original 8 founding Grand Masters of the Grey Knights or the original 20 Space Marine Legions of the first founding, but from a unique form of gene seed engineered from the genome of the Emperor of Mankind himself, what is known as the Emperor's Gift. Few warriors since the Horus Heresy have matched the flawlessness of the Grey Knights, nor are any so closely linked to the Emperor. It is that unique quality that the Emperor possesses, the nature of his spirit and mind, that allows him to touch the immaterium, shape it to his will, and yet remain beyond its madness and corruption that he has gifted to the Grey Knights. Even the Space Marines of the Adeptus Astartes are genetically too far removed from their creator to embody such psychic and moral purity, their genetic integrity faded by hundreds of generations and thousands of Terran years, given to varying degrees of imperfection and even mutation. Not so the Grey Knights, whose unblemished line reaches back to their maker in an unbroken chain. Only an unblemished soul is proof against the spiritual assault of chaos, and of all the servants of the Emperor, the Grey Knights are among the rare few to be all but immune. Each Grey Knight is a 1 in a billion example of humanity that has an instinctual command of his psychic powers, the rarest of genetic traits that, when combined with the unusually potent gene seed of the Grey Knights, grows into a formidable and exceptional tool to combat demons. Without these gifts, a mortal might become a plaything for the powers of the warp, their physical body twisted into vile and terrible new mutant forms, or their psyche ripped asunder by vile demonic thoughts and visions. As the Imperium learned to its sorrow during the Horus Heresy, the warp can corrupt even a Space Marine, the lies of the Chaos Gods, subverting his martial pride or loyalty to the Emperor into a dark and dangerous thing. Power armor and bolt rounds can protect neither mortal man nor astartes from the spiritual temptations of the Immaterium, should they be exposed to its baleful energies. The Emperor alone was said to be incorruptible before the temptations of the Dark Gods, and it is this gift he was rumored to have passed on to the Grey Knights. Certainly, despite countless battles against demonic forces, and in the 100 centuries since their creation, not a single Grey Knight has succumbed to the influence of the ruinous powers, a testament to the skill of their creator and the dedication to humanity they embody. The Grey Knights is unlike any other Space Marine chapter, built around the tenets laid down by Malkador the Sigillite and the first Grand Masters of the chapter, the Titans. Though officially recorded as a second founding chapter, The Grey Knights do not follow the dictates of the Codex Astartes, the great work of Robert Guilliman, whose edicts underpin the creation of those other brotherhoods of the Adeptus Astartes. Instead, the secretive Grey Knights follow the tenets of structure they believe were handed down by the Sigillite, tenets born of the unique demands of their war against the Dark Gods. While the Grey Knights are technically astartes, they do not involve themselves with the ordinary activities of the other Space Marines. They have no primarch to revere, as their gene seed was crafted from the genome of the Emperor himself. They are attached to the Ordo Malleus, serving as its chamber militant, charged with uncovering and expunging the heretical taint of chaos wherever it is found. The Grey Knights chapter is organized into large units called Brotherhoods, each one comparable in size to a Space Marine battle company. Brother captains lead these formations under the auspices of the Grand Masters, who in turn are guided by the decisions of the Supreme Grand Master. The Grey Knights are governed and directed by the Chapter Council, made up of the Chapter Lord, also known as the Supreme Grand Master, and the 8 Grand Masters of the Brotherhoods who all meet at an oaken table. The structure of this council is one of the Grey Knights' oldest traditions, as laid down at the chapter's founding by Malcador the Sigillite and his 8 Astartes recruits, who had once been his knights errant during the Horus Heresy. The council meet in person rarely, for its members often fight far from Titan. Each member of the council has an equal voice, though the chapter lord has the responsibility to pass final judgment when there is no clear consensus among the Grand Masters. Although the chapter lord's rule is ultimately absolute, he can only be appointed to his position by the unanimous consent of the Grand Masters, so it is nigh impossible for a reckless or unsuitable candidate to achieve dominion over the chapter. Each Grand Master also holds sway over one of the chapter's constituent bodies, such as its chapter fleet, armory, or librarius. Each institution is nominally held to form part of that Grand Master's brotherhood, though he dispatches elements of these organizations to undertake extended duties with others. This authority, only partly ceremonial, is tied to the command of a particular brotherhood, and over time, the association has informed that brotherhood's fighting style and tactics. Yet in truth, a Grand Master's chief responsibility is on the battlefield. The Grey Knights are spread thin throughout the galaxy, and it is not always possible for a brother captain of one of the Brotherhoods to command every strike force. Thus, the Grand Masters take charge of the most crucial campaigns where even an experienced brother captain is not thought equal to the task. This most commonly happens when one of the Conclave Diabolus, the 101 greater demons in which the Grey Knights take special interest, is sighted in the mortal realm. Chaplains lead the chapter in prayer during gatherings in the Hall of Champions, and it is there also that the wisdom and knowledge of the chapter's venerable dreadnoughts is often sought. The bulk of the Grey Knights chapter is organized into Brotherhoods, fighting formations roughly equivalent to the battle companies of other Space Marine chapters. The chapter comprises 8 such Brotherhoods, each corresponding to one of the 8 Astartes Titans and former Knights Errant that were chosen by Malcador the Sigillite and the Emperor to be the initial core of the chapter at the time of the Horus Heresy. On paper, each of the chapter's Brotherhoods contains roughly 100 battle brothers under arms, though this nominal figure does not include the Brotherhood's officers, the Brotherhood's brother captain in active tactical command, the Brotherhood's champion, ancient other officers who may act in support, and the Grand Master who holds final responsibility over the Brotherhood. Each Brotherhood is divided up into the various squads and formations of the chapter. These each fall into several broad categories, focused on the different fighting methods and specialized war gear used by the Grey Knights. As with other Space Marine chapters, the Grey Knights of each Brotherhood are primarily organized into squads of 10 battle brothers, each of which can then further divide into 2 combat squads of 5, should the mission's tactical requirements so dictate. A Grey Knight squad is considered to remain effective with only 5 of its members battle-worthy, so with a small amount of duty reassignment and doctrinal flexibility, a brother captain can keep his brotherhood at an acceptable fighting strength, even with up to a third of his warriors out of commission. Decisions concerning the exact breakdown of squad type within a brotherhood rest entirely with its brother captain and grandmaster. However, it has long been proven that a rough tactical balance of squads, between 3 and 7 operational units each of Terminator, Purgation, and Strike squads, is by far the most effective combination. Accordingly, all but the most maverick of Grey Knight's commanders follow this example and make only minor changes to suit their tactical preferences. Regardless of role, all Grey Knight squads draw their equipment from the same armory of Nemesis Force weapons, grenades, storm bolters, and psi-enhanced heavy weapons. Each squad also independently practices its own psychic disciplines, the better to allow mental and physical prowess to act in reinforced harmony. The only drawback to this organization is that when a Grey Knight moves from one type of squad to another, he must learn anew how to wield his psychic potential in battle, suppressing all other applications he has learned to that point. Each of a Brotherhood's squads is led by a Justicar, a Grey Knight who holds a rank equivalent to that of a standard Space Marine Sergeant. It takes a powerful mind to lead other Grey Knights in both battle and psychic unity, and only the most adept battle brothers rise to this honored rank. In addition to his bonds of leadership, it is the Justicar's duty to hone and focus the psychic powers of the battle brothers he leads and to act as the conduit for their abilities. Such a role places the Justicar in greater danger than his fellows, for as the squad's mystic focus he will be the first to suffer should things go awry. During his career, a battle brother of the chapter will take on many different roles, from serving in the Terminator squads with Blade and Stormbolter to the more lightly armored strike squads or heavily armed purgation squads. It is the responsibility of every Grey Knight to become skilled in all of the weapons used by the chapter, just as he must hone his psychic powers into a mystic blade with which to cut down warp spawn. All battle brothers are trained in the use of every piece of war gear and armor possessed by the chapter. Thus, it is possible for a battle brother to serve in different types of squads from one mission to the next. The Grey Knights maintain many of the same specialist and officer roles as other Space Marines. Librarians exercise greater and more diverse psychic powers than most Grey Knights, and help to hone the psychic powers of their battle brothers. Tech Marines have trained with the Tech Priests of Mars, whose techno-religious strictures the Tech Marines balance with the Grey Knights' needs. They maintain the chapter's vehicles and help craft the psychically imbued war gear its warriors wield. Apothecaries, meanwhile, oversee the creation of new Grey Knights with arcane genetic implantation, as well as healing the most terrible of warp-infected injuries and contagions with Medicaid tools and chirurgical rituals. These warriors are assigned to fight alongside one of the Grey Knight's Brotherhoods, often for their entire lives, and in certain cases may even be granted command to lead strikes themselves. They are as embedded in their Brotherhood's traditional rites and rituals as all its warriors, and lend their considerable skills to its successful prosecution of the demon. Though assigned to a particular Brotherhood, these specialist officers may have completed their training under the auspices of another Grand Master. The chapter's armory, for example, traditionally falls under the rule of the First Brotherhood's Grand Master, and he has ultimate responsibility for assigning the Tech Marines chapter duties. In addition to the Brotherhoods, the Grey Knights maintain 2 further fighting bodies. Answerable directly to the Chapter Council, they accompany forces at the request of the Purifiers are anathema to warp spawn. Chaos-tainted creatures wither at their touch. The Order of Purifiers, led by its Castellan champion, and the Knights of the Flame, can be considered a separate and entirely unique brotherhood of the chapter. There are rarely more than 50 Purifiers at any one time in the chapter, and on those occasions when their numbers do swell, it inevitably foreshadows some great demonic incursion. Just as the Purifiers are exemplars of the chapter's spiritual heart, the Paladins are its martial champions, a company of some 100 or so of the most skilled warriors, from whose ranks is selected the Grey Knight's most honored ancient. Though they act primarily as honor guards for the Grey Knight's Grand Masters, Paladin squads are commonly assigned to fight alongside the Brotherhoods. Their skill and experience can swing the odds of even the most desperate battle. Considering the role of the Grey Knights in the Inquisition, potential recruits are put through even more stringent trials than other Space Marine aspirants. It is the chapter's gatherers who set out across the galaxy in search of new recruits for the chapter. The gatherers are Grey Knights, whose great age or severe injuries no longer permit them to undertake the primary work of the chapter, but whose keen senses and minds can still detect an aspirant hero from amongst the common rabble of humanity. It is the task of these battle brothers to search the Imperium for suitable candidates and look into their minds for signs of weakness. As the most favored agents of the Emperor, there are no sources of manpower denied to the Grey Knights, the seed worlds of Space Marine chapters, forbidding penal worlds, and even the dreaded black ships are all open to them. The strongest recruits are brought back to Titan to be tested. The Chamber of Trials is where aspirants arrive and their training begins, if they survive. Recruits are subjected to mental and physical torment to see if they will break, even before they face the horrors of the warp. Shivering in the holds of antiquated shuttles, the recruits are brought down to the surface of Titan. Some are taken to the citadel of Titan, but many are released onto the desolate plain and made to walk to the great fortress gates. Even though Titan was terraformed long ago to be habitable to humans, its thin atmosphere remains freezing and inhospitable. This is more than just a test of endurance. Is it also one of conviction? Those recruits that turn from the distant Black Towers, favoring their chances in the wilds of Titan, have shown themselves undisciplined and willfully independent. The reward for this cowardice is always death. Those that reach the gates are given only the briefest chance to enjoy their accomplishment. They are immediately sent out once more into the cold, this time on a trek of 1,000 kilometers to the shimmering tundra of caustic crystals, perpetually locked in a chemical haze known as the Xanadu region. To breathe the strange vapors of this place is to feel one's mind slipping away, stolen by alien thoughts and nightmare visions. Even to reach Xanadu, a recruit must brave a score of deadly zones from the Anarch High Pass, where a whispered word can trigger an avalanche of choking chemical dust, and the rusting desert littered with the hulls of broken void ships and roaming packs of servitors driven insane by time and decay, to the Saturnine Maze, an ancient weapon of war left over from the Emperor's conquest of Titan during the Great Crusade, filled with hidden nightmares and the spirits of vanquished warriors. During his journey, the recruit must also contain his immature psychic powers, and an inhibitor collar is fixed around his neck, which is keyed to explode should he lose control. This can become almost impossible when the recruit reaches Xanadu and breathes deeply of the toxic chemicals as reality becomes undone around him. All who come to the Xanadu region must bear witness to those who have failed, as thousands of headless skeletons are scattered across the landscape. Fewer than 1 in 1,000 recruits will return from Xanadu. For those that do, long solar weeks of pain and sacrifice await. From the glyphite-stalked caverns beneath Ganesa Macula to the icy subsurface oceans of Eos Antor, one test after another must be passed before the Grey Knights are content that the recruit has the strength of will and physical prowess to survive. Finally, the rare few that live to reach this stage are officially inducted into the chapter as neophytes, so that their true training might begin. The most advanced bioengineering and psychosurgery available is utilized to condition these aspirants, and each recruit must pass the 666 rituals of detestation to prove that he is capable of withstanding horrors that would break even the greatest of normal Space Marines. Upon success, the recruit also has all memory of his prior existence and identity erased using a mind wipe to better ensure his absolute and unwavering loyalty to the Emperor, and to prevent demons from using the aspirant's fears, memories, and feelings against him. One of the main criteria for selection into the chapter is that the recruit must show great psychic potential, as the entire chapter is made up of psychers. Once they begin to undergo the standard gene seed organ implantation process to transform an aspirant into an astartes of the Grey Knights, the new Grey Knight is also implanted with silver hexagrammic and pentagrammic purity wards under his skin, which cover his entire body and help to prevent demonic entities from touching or contaminating him. Unlike standard Space Marines who first serve in their chapter's Scout Marine Company, Grey Knight Initiates are awarded a suit of full power armor, or Aegis armor, and are immediately pressed into service. They then move through the ranks as detailed above. This is due to their elite training. They surpass any other type of Space Marine in combat, and in every trial, they are the elite of the Space Marines and serve as the right hand of the Emperor. They are the greatest army of the Imperium and mankind's most potent weapon against the forces of chaos. The creation of a Grey Knight is an expensive undertaking, even more so than the creation of a standard astartes. It is said that only 1 in every 1 million aspirants will ascend to the rank of a full battle brother of the chapter. As an additional measure of protection, no Grey Knight bears the name he was given at his birth. This is in part to distance him from his previous life and loyalties, an outward sign of having essentially been reborn into the service of the Inquisition. From the arcane lore stored within the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Grey Knights bestow names to their new recruits, each one a carefully chosen title fashioned into a weapon. Just as every true name holds power over the demon who bears it, so too do the true names of mortals have resonance within the warp. For this reason, when a Grey Knight is recruited, his name is one of the first things scrubbed from his mind, along with much of his past. Once a Grey Knight's identity has been erased and rebuilt during training, he is unlikely to remember his past. By the time the hulking transporters set down on the frozen surface of Titan, the men within have forgotten much of their lives. They enter the citadel of Titan not as the warriors they once were, but as the refined materials the chapter will use to create new battle brothers. During the long solar days and months of training, these men have no names, only the designation given to them by the chapter. Those that fall are buried in unmarked graves, if they are buried at all. Only upon completion of his training is a Grey Knight granted his new name. Until that point, neophytes are assigned only a number. The tiny fraction of recruits that survive the grueling trials on Titan and the process of genetic implantation are finally gifted with new names. Each name is actually a fragment of arcane lore, divined by the labors of the chapter's scribes to act in perfect opposition to the true name of a particular demon. Thus, even the Grey Knight's name is a weapon against his hated foe. Like the true names of demons, the auspicious names given to Grey Knights are ever in flux. Nonetheless, some have resurfaced again and again over the millennia, gaining in power just as a specific demon is reborn from the warp. So it is that a Grey Knight's name might have been borne by many battle brothers before him. Each name is derived from the true name of a demon, a counter to its terrible meaning, so that even to hear the Grey Knight's name spoken aloud causes the warp creature pain, and to stand in the battle brother's presence is the purest of agonies. Traditionally, it is considered an honor and a prophetic sign of great deeds in one's future to be given a name matching one of Saturn's moons. Such nomenclature is accordingly rare. The information on the Grey Knight's true identity after his rebirth does not exist outside the sealed records of the Inquisition. It does not even exist within the vast data stacks of the citadel of Titan's Librarius. This data is rarely accessed, and in truth, this kind of lore was often archived and forgotten, rather than consciously buried in the Sol System's annals. Even amongst the Inquisition, only the most curious souls would care for such knowledge, as it is worthless beyond its value as a harmless curiosity. It offers no advantage over an enemy. The Grey Knights are trained and bound and scourged to rarely care about their former lives, and Inquisitors gain no special influence over them by possessing it. Few souls are curious enough to look, a handful every solar decade, but no more than that. Most engagements of the chapter will involve a single squad of Grey Knights supporting an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor, or a local force of planetary law enforcement, military forces, or Astra Militarum. For the most serious demonic incursions, several squads of Grey Knights numbering usually about 20 astartes are collected around the presence of a senior captain, or even a Grand Master. In these circumstances, tactical squads will attempt to establish a beachhead in the chaos-tainted area before the Terminators and senior Astartes teleport down to the surface and engage the primary demon, banishing it back to the Imperium. The very presence of Grey Knights upon the field of battle is painful to demons and other warp entities. The Grey Knight's gestalt psychic purity and powers are combined through a squad's Justicar into the Aegis, a psychic choir that is amplified by the presence of additional squads psychically singing in tandem. These normally inaudible sonorous chants of detestation act as a weapon that repels the demonic and makes it hard for these entities to maintain a presence in the physical universe. The presence of telekines in Grey Knight squads enhances the potency of the Aegis. By raising psychic shields, the telekines allow their battle brothers to advance on targets with relative impunity. This means that Grey Knights gain immense advantages against Chaos opposition, but the high expense to the Imperium of creating even a single Grey Knight leads to its own tactical problems. For all their power, Grey Knights will always be badly outnumbered and must focus upon the fast and lethal application of force. A byproduct of the use of the Aegis is the absence of any war cry for the chapter. Grey Knights attack in seeming silence and take care of their objective with remarkable economy of both action and communication. A Grey Knight's force also contains a high proportion of troops who can teleport through the warp into battle, a high-risk maneuver which can turn the tide of combat if deployed well. Teleportation may also require complicated battle-related arrangement and positioning, and depending on the mission, can involve large number of squads teleporting in sync. The Grey Knights are anathema to demons, their very presence raw and painful to the creatures of the warp. No other warriors of the Emperor are so adept at fighting demons, and each battle brother is expertly trained in the many methods of banishing and destroying these deadly yet ephemeral foes. There are many ways to banish a demon, almost as many as there are demons themselves. So it is that the Grey Knights possess a myriad means for vanquishing the denizens of the warp, though not every method works on every demon, or even twice on the same creature. The chapter is therefore always adapting to combat the ever-changing face of their foe. It is a constant war of escalation that has been waged since the inception of the chapter and before, when the Emperor first began unraveling the secrets of the warp. For every weapon and tactic the Grey Knights develop and employ, the demons counter with warp sorcery and trickery. Chief amongst the Grey Knights' strategies concerning the vanquishing of a demon is obtaining knowledge of the beast's true name. Knowledge of a demon's true name grants great power, which is why many demons adopt misleading pseudonyms or titles and seldom use their true names save in their most secretive of dealings. In the hands of a psyker or sorcerer, a true name can be invoked to bind or even banish a demon, regardless of its power. Ordinarily, these complex incantations take long solar hours, or even days. Each word must be carefully enunciated and each gesture precise, lest the sorcerer become corrupted by the magics of the warp. Invoking a true name is a demonic pact of sorts, albeit one in which the demon is at a severe disadvantage. For a Grey Knight, however, a true name is a weapon as reliable and immediate as the Stormbolter borne upon his left gauntlet. Even the lowliest Grey Knight can invoke a true name with practice, disorienting and weakening his foe, and leaving the beast open for a killing strike from a nemesis force blade or a well-placed bolt round. In the hands of an accomplished veteran of the chapter, a true name becomes even more deadly, able to destroy the demon's physical form and cast it back into the warp, leaving only a lingering sulfurous stench and ectoplasmic residue. To banish a demon in this manner is the closest that the Grey Knights can come to a lasting victory. A demon bodily slain will return to the mortal realm far sooner than one banished body and soul. Alas, if true names are a Grey Knight's surest weapon against the demon, they are also the hardest of all to acquire. As with all things demonic, a true name is born of the warp, and its reflection in the minds and tongues of mortals is as shifting and mutable as the beast to whom it relates. So it is that in the candlelit chambers of the Grey Knight's augurium, a veritable army of ebon-cowled scribes toil in shadow, endlessly sifting through the visions reported by the chapter's prognosticars, searching for clues to the ever-changing true names. It is a long and dangerous process, for no scribe can ever be trusted with more than a fragment of a true name, lest he become corrupted by the raw power it contains and threaten the very chapter he seeks to serve. Thus, each scintilla of lore is inscribed onto a blessed scroll in sigils of the scribe's own blood. Mere ink cannot cage such knowledge. Each is then presented for collation and interpretation by one of the chapter's senior librarians, and in turn, bound into one of the blessed grimoires within the citadel of Titan's Sanctum Sanctorum. Demons are beings of the Imperium and are made up of the very raw energy of chaos. This makes them creatures of nightmare, rage, and fear, crafted from the base emotions and thoughts of mankind. When fighting such a foe, strength of will and faith are as deadly as blades and bolt rounds, flesh-tearing and ichor spillings with but a word of power. A Grey Knight will learn these words by heart and use them in battle to weaken or destroy demonic foes, chanting them as he fires hammering shots from his Stormbolter or cleaves apart his enemies with his Nemesis Force halberd. The words are key to the most complex rituals of the Grey Knights, woven into their prayers and their rites of exorcism to increase their potency. There are 666 known words of banishment, each one a closely guarded secret by the chapter and learned at great cost. Most mortals that look upon a word of banishment will lose their minds, its eye-searing symmetry and terrible definition breaking all but the strongest of wills. Even a Grey Knight battle brother must temper his spirit before he learns even the most basic of these words. To date, only a single Grey Knight, the first Supreme Grand Master Janus, has ever learned all 666 words of banishment, the weight of this knowledge almost too much for even the most accomplished battle brothers to bear. Just like the warp, the words of banishment are always in flux, each one changing and mutating. The Grey Knight's librarians and prognosticars must be ever vigilant for subtle variations within the words of banishment while they search for the true names of demons. The creatures of the warp and even the dark gods themselves are constantly altering, as is the nature of the Imperium, so that a word that once held power inevitably changes or loses its meaning entirely. An invocation against demonic enemies that could once enslave or bind is therefore robbed of its power. However, such is the fickle nature of chaos that for every demon that unravels a word of banishment, another is creating more for its own amusement. And so the endless war continues. Not all weapons the Grey Knights use to defeat demons are human in origin. Over millennia of war and strife, the chapter has scoured the galaxy for secrets to use against the dark gods, some of them deriving from alien technology and ancient Xenos empires. Humanity is not the only species to have suffered at the hands of demonkind. Countless races and worlds were wiped from history by demonic incursions long before mankind even stepped out into the void. In the dead remains of alien cities or the dust-swept plains of remote planets, the Ordo Malleus has recovered many artifacts that now rest in the vaults on Titan. Equally, elements of the Inquisition have even made deals with living Xenos races, trading technology and aid in return for their knowledge of the warp and its inhabitants. One such temporary alliance with the Necrons has yielded the Tesseract Labyrinths, strange objects crafted with heretical science by cunning alien hands. Each one is a cube, roughly the size of a Space Marine's fist, covered in a precise geometric web of circuitry. The Tesseract Labyrinths possess the ability not only to trap warp creatures, but also to contain them within the esoteric energy field of its zero-point reactor. The power of the demon is then contained by its own essence. The more it fights against the Tesseract, the stronger the bonds of its prison become. However, luring a demon into a Tesseract labyrinth is no easy task, as most warp creatures will choose to abandon their mortal forms and return to the Imperium before they can be bound to the alien devices. To date, only a handful of inhabited Tesseracts are held in the vaults of Titan, each one the culmination of a great battle or epic campaign in which the Grey Knights were triumphant. For almost 100 standard centuries, Titan has been the secret fortress of the Grey Knights. Glittering in the darkness of Saturn's shadow, The ice moon bristles with orbital defense platforms and fleets of sleek gray vessels. Beneath its frozen surface, generations of Grey Knights are created and laid to rest in an endless cycle of birth and death. At the base of Mount Anarch, tallest of Titan's peaks, rise the black basalt spires of the Citadel of Titan, the Grey Knights' fortress monastery. Built by the Emperor over 10,000 standard years ago, the Citadel of Titan has endured through countless ages of war and strife. Covered with dust and shadow, the dark edifice is festooned with macro cannons and massive lance turrets, their heavy barrels aimed out into the night. It is a forbidding sight that welcomes no visitors and brooks no trespass. In fact, even the existence of the Citadel is a closely guarded secret, and in the populous space lanes of the Sol System vessels give this satellite of Saturn a wide berth, their captains well aware that it does not pay to stray too close to the ominous moon. Within the frigid halls of the Citadel, servitors and chapter serfs shuffle along empty corridors and tend to the millions of menial tasks required to keep the fortress running. Occasionally, a towering Grey Knight will stride past, always with purpose and always cloaked in the menacing air of barely contained power. The Citadel is the heart of the chapter, a place for battle brothers to rest, meditate, and train between their endless battles. The mighty Citadel is also home to the Librarium Daemonica, the Imperium's foremost repository of information relating to demons, demonology, sorcery, and the ruinous powers of chaos. This mighty structure, designed to accommodate over 1,000 space marines and all their weapons of war, stands largely silent and empty as squads of Grey Knights are scattered throughout the galaxy in order to best respond to the threat of the forces of chaos wherever they may strike. The Grey Knights have many abilities that standard space marines lack. These powers are psychic in nature and work on a gestalt principle much like that of the orcs, in which the more Grey Knights that are present in one location, the more powerful their psychic abilities manifest. Beside these powers, the Grey Knights are highly skilled close combat fighters. Most Grey Knights who are masters of melee combat are able to win against even the most seemingly impossible of odds. Unlike Space Marine librarians or other psychers, their power is deemed free of the taint of the warp, and they are the only psychers allowed, for instance, in a Black Templars chapter crusade army. All Grey Knights possess a degree of psychic ability and are highly accomplished psychers, their abilities further developed and enhanced by their standard years of training on Titan. While only a handful of Grey Knights battle brothers ever achieve the levels of power commanded by the chapter's librarians, they are all capable of manifesting certain powers and abilities, especially in the company of other Grey Knights, where they can combine their gifts to create great effects and more devastating psychic attacks. However, those who prove to have a strength of mind far greater than that of their fellows will go on to join the ranks of the chapter's librarians. Each Grey Knight is trained to channel his mental energies into protective wards and an array of battle spells. The mightiest Grey Knights of all can banish demons with but a touch, conjure psychic defenses to protect their allies, and unleash the destructive power of the warp itself upon their foes. The Grey Knight's selection of psychic powers has been formed over millennia of combat against the worst monsters the galaxy has to offer. While these powers are most commonly used by Grey Knights librarians, it is not unheard of for an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor to learn these abilities or an Astra Militarum Primaris Psyker to train in one of these rare disciplines. The psychic powers of the Demon Hunter are not subtle. They are weapons of war against the most terrible foes of the Emperor of mankind. Like other Space Marine chapters, the Grey Knight's primary mode of transportation is the strike cruiser class of Imperial warship that is exclusive to the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. However, the Grey Knight's starships are specially modified in several ways. One is the hexagrammic and anti-demonic wards that are built into the entire void ship from bridge to landing struts and every bulkhead in between, similar to those that are placed under the skin of the Grey Knights themselves. These wards lend the vessels added protection from the forces of chaos. Also, the Grey Knight strike cruisers are equipped with significantly more advanced armor than the starships of other chapters. This is to allow them to close with more powerful foes and reach their destination safely, since the Grey Knights must fight more powerful enemies than the standard Adeptus Astartes chapters. All Grey Knights ships also contain teleportation chambers and have specially modified warp drives that allow them to reach their destinations much faster than conventional Imperial warships. The landing and drop pod bays of Grey Knights vessels are enlarged to be able to deploy larger numbers of Space Marines faster. The mortal crew members of Grey Knights strike cruisers are all strictly mind-wiped to prevent the possible taint of chaos corruption, and are psychically implanted with a key word which will kill them automatically by shutting down their autonomic nervous systems should their vessel fall into the hands of the forces of chaos. Grey Knight starships do not broadcast any known transponder codes, and the vessels do not exist in any registry of the Imperial fleet. According to the Inquisition's policy of secrecy, any unauthorized contact, however fleeting, with a Grey Knight's vessel will subject the contactees to the appropriate countermeasures, including mind wipe or liquidation. The advanced nature of the Grey Knight's starships is made possible by two factors. The first is their fortress monastery's close proximity to Mars, the greatest forge world in the Imperium of Man, which allows the chapter access to technology that was lost or is impossible to replicate anywhere else in the Imperium. The vast resources that the Ordo Malleus makes available to the Grey Knights, due to their position as the Ordo's chamber militant, also allows the Grey Knights to obtain nearly any piece of equipment or technology available from other Imperial Adepta.